Welcome to Opt In with April Jasper. Relevant conversations about topics important to eye care providers today.
Before neural lenses, I always had eye strain,
eye dryness,
eye fatigue,
moderate to severe headaches.
I had to take prescription medication.
It was to the point where my kids, they'd want me to sit down and color or read them books, and I couldn't do nothing.
When I got my neural lenses, my headache went away.
I wasn't taking Tylenol anymore.
Can't explain it, but it worked.
I would pay double for my neural lenses because I can't go a day without them.
Welcome, everyone. I am so glad you've joined us again today. And we are going to have a great time because I am in West Palm Beach, Florida, and Professor John Nolan is not. Where are you at, Dr. Nolan?
Yeah, I'm in the sunny southeast in the Republic of Ireland. I'm at the Nutrition Research Centre Ireland this morning.
Wow. Well, I want everyone to know a little bit about you as we get started. So John Nolan is a professor and research director and founder of the Nutrition Research Centre Ireland, based at Southeast Technological University. So Dr. Nolan, I've been with you. Professor Nolan's been on different conversations with me for a long time, and we've talked a lot about macular pigment research. But before we get started on our topics today, I really want him to tell you a little bit more about himself, his beautiful family, and what he's doing these days.
Yeah, thank you, April. Thank you for the opportunity. And it's always wonderful to connect with you and have these type of discussions. So yeah, my name is John, obviously. I'm a research director of the Nutrition Research Centre Ireland. We're at Waterford, and it's just recently been upgraded to university. So it's the Southeast Technological University. Yeah, I live here with my family, my wife, Jane. I have two little girls, Penny and Bee, 7 and 3 years of age. So they are the heart of our life. They're the heart of our family, and they keep me very, very focused and very honest. But yeah, so it's I've been doing this research now for approaching 25 years, believe it or not, from when I started my own PhD. So it's been quite a journey.
It is definitely hard to believe it's been 25 years, but you look great. The family's amazing. And I just love that you have done so much, John, to impact our practices and what we do every day with our patients. So everybody's been waiting. Tell us, what are you working on currently, and what gets you all excited about the research that you're in today?
Yeah, I suppose if we think about it for a little bit, not too dissimilar to clinical practice, the success of what we can do is related to the opportunities in terms of technology and advancements in information, and research is the same. And we spent so many years really trying to understand, about the macular pigments, the carotenoids, lutein, zeaxanthin, and mesozeaxanthin, in terms of how can we change them in a positive way. And if you were to ask me what have we done in our research, I think we've really figured that piece out, that we've identified them. We know that they're important. We now know how to measure them. That's one of the big advancements in terms of the research piece, at least. And we know how we can apply that information to help patients. And that is, I think, the big learnings over the last decade have been that, these nutrients are not just for sick eyes. They're not just for macular degeneration or retinas that are being, deteriorated. Yeah. Of course, they're important for those populations, but in terms of optometry, it's kind of like, I always use the sunscreen analogy. We shouldn't wait till we have this sunburn before we're proactive in terms of using these antioxidants. And it's no different in terms of what we've been able to do. And, I'm so proud of what America has done, America Optometry, in terms of connecting with science. It's been a long journey, but I have to say, in terms of eye care and optometry, your colleagues have led the way in this field. And as a scientist, we live on a currency of publications and research grants, and it's a tough environment. Publications are one thing, but when you see an eye doctor, connect with you and connect with the science that you've been part of, and then implement that successfully. Yeah. I think for a scientist, that's the biggest win that I could have ever dreamed of, that this is actually happening. And I saw this actually most recently in the last few conferences I've been at. It was like clinical validation of everything that we've been saying, this international project that is macular pigment research. and all the brilliant scientists from all over. But to see the doctors come back, doctor after doctor, and say, yeah, this is great. We've had so much success. Tell me about their own case individuals. Tell me about their patient stories.
Wow.
For me, it's just mind blowing. I remember saying to Jane, I was at a conference in Washington and Palm Springs recently, different events, and it was a consistency of message. And I think that's just wonderful for our scientific community, but most importantly for the doctors and for the patients, right?
Absolutely. You know, you brought up a really good point. We have, for so long, our energy in the clinic has been focused on patients that are losing vision as a result of age-related macular degeneration. And we've just, you know, it's a horrible moment when you're there with a patient and they're sad, I'm sad, and I know there isn't much I can do other than now they go down the road of injections. And so for the longest time, we just didn't know what else to do other than start that conversation when they had a problem. And so I have really enjoyed this new world, this new life of prevention.
Yeah.
And so here's the confusing part though, John. It's confusing for us as clinicians when we don't know what conversation to have and we don't know what product to use. So how has your research made a difference? And maybe we should start by you telling us a little bit about the different types of research.
Yeah, okay, for sure. So the different types of research that we do here, and I'll answer those because your question is very, very timely and very important. But to tell you about the research we've been able to do is because of the different types of research that we do. So what do I mean by that? So at the facility I'm speaking to you from today at the university, downstairs we have analytical chemists, biochemistry, nutrition, statistics, vision science, optometry, general care, epidemiology. So that's multifactorial, it's multidisciplinary, right? And you know, and it's really, so that's the type of research that's underway. That's what we're doing. Ultimately, when we run a human clinical trial, what you're trying to do is have a research question. Can we improve macular pigment in a way that we can enhance vision for a healthy population? That might be the question. So right. To do that, it takes all of these elements of expertise to be able to design a protocol and conduct an experiment to answer a question. Because to one of your first questions, April, and that is like, it's confusing, right? So, you know, it takes a brave doctor to make a decision to make a recommendation maybe like this. But the only kind of comfort that we can give is that if this is built from a solid evidence-based scientific place. Yep. So, and I think that's why it's worked. So the research that we're doing at the moment, you know, we've just published new work with how we can enhance, for example, the bioavailability of the carotenoid. So if you're taking, you know, the supplement we use, was MacuHealth in that intervention. But we were able to formulate it and work with the providers in a way to enhance the formulation. So it's more stable, more bioavailable. So now when you make a recommendation to your patients, you know they're going to get a better result, at least in the changing the circulating levels. And now we have the evidence that that's really important for vision and protection against diseases like macular degeneration. So, you know, and you ask, you know, the other point of the question was, look, well, it's kind of confusing, not just should we do this? Yes, we know we should do this. And how do we do it? It's probably the other element of the question. And this is more timely than ever, because over the pandemic, we published some work showing that about 70% of commercially available supplements are like inactive, unstable, degrading. And it's this type of information that takes the confidence away from the eye doctor, because what can they trust? What can they do? And so, you know, when I'm lecturing, I speak about, you know, making a recommendation, and it's absolute time that we do that, but do so using the evidence base. And there's some very simple questions that an eye doctor can ask the sales reps or whoever is promoting the various supplements to them, is to show you the specific research that has been done on that product. Because what you see a lot of is that commercial companies will kind of plagiarize, if you like, scientific experiments and make claims relating to their product, which may be true, but unless they're tested, we don't know. And the one thing I found in carotenoid macular pigment research is that there's lots of differences in terms of how a supplement will perform, and the science begins in the marigold field, where these come from, how they're harvested, how they're processed, how the company we worked with, Industrial Organica, the work that they do to deliver the most pure product available, that thereafter is formulated, and companies like MacuHealth then have had so much success with their formulations because of the investment into that keyword being quality. Okay. And the patient deserves quality, and the doctor deserves quality.
Right.
So I think it's a good time though for this, because I think you can ask for that research. So the specific research, and the other piece is a very simple question is, does the product have a quality symbol? Does it have a stability program that it's part of? A very simple question to ask. And with full disclosure, I must say that our university provides that service. And we did so, not that we set up that we wanted to kind of provide a service of testing of these supplements. And we will test any supplement, there's no exclusivity in terms of the type of supplements that we analyze. Any commercial organization that wants to have their product tested, which they should be made to, by the way, we will do that. And we did that because our lab scientists, who are brilliant, really, really figured out how to kind of separate the carotenoids, to quantify them accurately, ISO standard quality in terms of what we do. And we learned that some supplements, for example, if they're not in an oil, they'll be degraded in about 25 days. It's that quick. So what we're putting our finger on here, April, is that one of the goals of our research now is actually lobbying with governments and policy to enhance regulatory procedures around the sale and use of supplements, because we know they work, but they'll only work if they're active, if they're present. So that's kind of maybe left of center in terms of absolute science that we're doing, but it's something that's very key to the Nutrition Research Centre Ireland. So supplement certified being the program, the supplement certified program. I have it here. You can see that it's trademarked by the university. This is the symbol that you should look for, which means that product goes on a quality assessment protocol over its lifetime, shelf life, and over the life of the label claim on the product.
Wow, that's good information for patients to know as well, because I know they get very confused. And unfortunately, all doctors don't give the same prescribing recommendations. And so for patients, it can be challenging.
Yeah, I think the prescription piece is key.
Yes.
The patient wants you to prescribe.
Yep.
They're there because you're the best at what you do, and they have trust in you. And that's why they're paying for the service. And they don't want to leave your clinical practice room not knowing what to do. They want to know what they should do.
Absolutely.
So I think that's really, really important for your listeners to kind of consider,
So what were the two questions? Can you tell us again, remind us again, what were the two questions that you can ask someone walking into your practice to verify whether or not their product is something that should be used?
Well, question one is, has this product been tested in a human clinical study where the safety and the efficacy, so the positive outcomes, have been demonstrated? So that's specific to the product. And the second question is, does that product have stability? Is it part of a stability program where the seller of the company can give you, the doctor, and the patient the confidence that what you're paying for is what you're getting? Because the evidence suggests that it's not, if it's not formulated correctly. So the only way is that it can be assessed on a stability program, which is a major commitment, by the way, for companies to do. It's they have to kind of sign up to proper membership of this, where every lot that's produced is sent to the ISO lab for analysis. And I think it's time that we draw a line between the organizations that do this right, that provide the quality formulations. The other piece, maybe there's a third piece to it, and I'm scientifically biased here, and that is I truly believe that the inclusion of mesozeaxanthin is delivers outcomes that are superior to formulations that don't have the 3 carotenoids. And equally, I'd say, I'm sometimes coined as the mesozeaxanthin guy. Yes, I am, but I believe in having the 3 parts of the jigsaw. So lutein is very important, zeaxanthin is very important, and meso. And that's why we've evolved as humans to concentrate the 3 carotenoids in the macula, not just 1, not just 2. There's 3 parts of this jigsaw.
Well, since you brought up the jigsaw, I want you to help us. If we were to be communicating with a patient right now the benefits of those three nutrients. Tell us how you would do that. Like, what would you say to a patient about what makes this supplement different and why it's important for them to use, and maybe even when to use it, meaning early prevention, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I suppose the when to use it kind of comes down to the desire and the goals of the patient themselves. So some patients that you'll be familiar with will come into your practice and they'll say, "Doctor, please, is there anything I can do to kind of, I want to have a better performance of vision, or I'm a little bit uncomfortable, playing sports, golf maybe, or tennis, or driving at night." These are all the kind of, is there anything you can do? And so the first answer to that is that, by enrichment of these pigments with the three carotenoids, lutein, zeaxanthin, and meso, over a 6-month period, you can significantly nourish the macula, and in a way that will deliver visual performance benefits for your patient. So in that case, it's kind of from a functional benefit, and you'll have patients who are well informed about that. And I think, we have new projects starting now, for example, with Sports Singapore, where we're working with their Olympic athletes in terms of taking, everything from across the sports, but we'll focus on shooting performance in terms of the Olympic athletes in that scenario. So that's very, very, we have a PhD program just started on that. So that's one thing. The other piece is, of course, patients that present to the practice, to the clinic, that are well worried because maybe they have the start of macular degeneration, or maybe they have a family history. In that situation, it's absolutely a no-brainer that there is an opportunity here to do something really well with the MacuHealth intervention. I take it personally myself, so does my wife Jane, and that's something that you can do. And prevention, cliche and all, but prevention obviously better than cure. We can't afford the disease macular degeneration, the aging population, the growing population, the change in nutritional profiles, the change in dietary patterns. There's a car crash coming down the road here. So we have to behave differently. And optometry is uniquely placed to lead the charge in how we do that, and how I believe we'll celebrate aging in a much more meaningful way if we can make subtle changes via safe and targeted and effective supplementation throughout our life. Right. When I'm 80, I want to be able to enjoy the football game. I want to be able to watch the golf like I did last night, and so on. So yeah, it's about, for me, it's not even about the disease piece. It's about the real-time visual function benefits. So that would be, I wouldn't have that much time with the patient. Of course, I've waffled a bit here, but there's so many layers to it. There's so many layers to how doctors can feel comfortable to help benefit their patient. And the patient will see it. The patient will be rewarded. And that's the most important thing.
I love that. That was actually perfect. So you talked a little bit about the patient who wants to see a difference in visual function, maybe an athlete or someone who wants to just see better. Now the patient's walked in the door, though, that actually has those signs of drusen, or they have a family history. And so they are concerned as well. And I just want to give doctors a way to have that conversation with that patient who has a little different concern. They do want to have great vision, but they're also just concerned about the disease itself. So would you frame that conversation a little bit different about the carotenoids?
Absolutely. And I think, so a couple of key pieces here. And we know this from our earlier publications, the MOST trials, the mesozeaxanthin ocular supplementation trials, and then validated clinically by the CREST AMD trial. So two big learnings here for that population that you summarize. One is that we know that patients at risk of age-related macular degeneration, and if you have a family history, you're at risk, by the way, or with early signs, so your drusen, your pigmentary changes, we know that these individuals are significantly likely to have a depression in their macular pigment, which means that they don't have that typical mountain profile. They have what we've coined a central dip. And we hypothesized that was likely due to a deficiency of the mesozeaxanthin carotenoid. And that was because from the brilliant anatomy studies, we could see that meso was concentrated right at the center. Wow. So we actually performed head-to-head clinical interventional trials. And long story short, in the patients that had the dips that we gave lutein, they left the experiment with a dip. But when we gave them mesozeaxanthin, we were able to rebuild that volcano into that typical mountain. So we were, if you accept that the carotenoids and the macular pigment is beneficial to have and is beneficial to be optimized centrally and across the macular pigment profile, we've now solved one part of the problem. We can fix it. And then in our earlier trials, we saw, improvements. And as you know, I have a passion for assessment of visual function, particularly around contrast sensitivity. We always use contrast sensitivity as a primary outcome measure. But when we looked at our AMD population, so we were, unlike ARIDS, right, which is like, had participants in who, and particularly in ARIDS 2, everyone in ARIDS 2 was already supplementing. In our AMD experiment, we only recruited patients who were newly diagnosed with drusen pigmentary changes. So bad news for them, they'd just been told, and we got right in there that front line. And these participants were then invited to take part in the CREST AMD trial. And in that experiment, we ran the 3 carotenoids versus a supplement that had the 2 carotenoids, lutein and zeaxanthin. And it was the co-nutrients that you see in ARIDS as well, but with very clear distinction. Low zinc, okay? We might come back to that in a little bit, because the 80 milligrams of zinc is not beneficial and potentially toxic, as we know. And so you get the same results if you have low zinc. But long story short, we didn't conduct that experiment to look at the disease. Although we did look at the disease, we quantified it, we spent a lot of money and a lot of time to do it. We worked with Moorfields Eye Hospital in London to do that. But we weren't powered like ARIDS to look at morphology, to look at disease. But we were powered, and we did design the experiment to look at function. And if I remember correctly, out of 32 tests of visual function that we looked at in these patients, what would normally happen is their vision would deteriorate. And contrast, by the way, is the first to drop. I think it was something like 27 of them got statistically better. And we're just about to publish new data now showing and demonstrating very clearly the clinically meaningfulness of this. So it's not just statistics that you get your p-value and everyone's happy. It's, does this clinically mean something? And it remarkably does. So the reason why I'm telling you this is, if we were to live in the world of that ARID study only, and I'm not, it can be critical or non-critical, complementary. I'm pretty much both when I look at ARIDS in terms of what it's delivered. It's a very valuable experiment. We've learned a lot from it, but we have learned a lot since then. Yep. And the first thing it makes, as a nutritional biochemist, it makes absolute no sense for me that any eye doctor, whether it's ophthalmology or optometry, will wait until something to get so sick that the only solution then is to inject, for about 3.3% of the people suffering with this. Standard medical care is let's wait till the retinas are so inflamed that we have to do a treatment that costs $20,000 a year. That's very kind of painful for the patients. And I'm not critical of that treatment. It's a wonderful treatment for what it does. And I get it, but it doesn't fix the big problem of retinal disease or macular degeneration. We have the power to change that. And nutrition is a major modifiable risk factor in what we can change. The other elements, of course, which everyone will know, will be smoking cessation, lifestyle is a pillar, exercise, all these wellness pieces that we can and should put together. So as we speak through this together, really, I would hope that the eye doctors that, maybe are a little bit confused will feel empowered that there is something that's been very much tested, that's very effective. And we also have clinical validation of that. I think that's the other piece. It's not just the scientists talking about it. It's been tested in the clinic with great success.
So we've talked a lot about macula, but how has this macular research gone from that to some conversation about vitreous?
Yeah, well, look, before we go to the vitreous, we should acknowledge, and maybe for another conversation, it's also cognitive, right? So the macula being that seeing part of the brain, the retina being that seeing part of the brain. And we've have a wealth of valuable information there around cognitive functions. We've had several PhD programs successfully concluded here, major work in Alzheimer's disease. And again, it's down to that antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, probably a lot more sophisticated than what I'm giving them credit in terms of what carotenoids do. You think of how they operate in plants, they turn enzymes on and off, activation. The brain is the same, they're living in our gap junctions. And we have a new paper about to be published, which is remarkable in terms of what it's delivering for Alzheimer's patients, in terms of quality of life, enhancing care report improvements in mood and memory. Just we're not going to fix Alzheimer's with a supplement, but we can certainly help the symptoms and hopefully reduce the burden and reduce the incidence of it. So we might come back to that another time. The vitreous, to answer your question, yeah, I mean, I have to be honest, I'm a little bit embarrassed at how little I knew about the vitreous when we started this work. It's probably 9 years ago now that we started to look at the vitreous, and as a very successful and brilliant doctor from California, Dr. Sibak, says it's time that we look at the vitreous and not just through it,
Love that.
Well put, right? So the vitreous came of interest to us, building upon our capacity to work with nutrition, building upon our capacity to understand visual function and how to quantify that. And really, essentially listening to the environment in terms of what patients, sufferers were saying. Eye care is guilty of trivializing vitreous floaters as a nuisance. It's just a nuisance, it'll go away. It's much, much more than that. And if you look at the major work by Jerry Sibak, he's been right about this for a long, long time. He's an amazing scientist and doctor, and his work on quality of life and how patients are affected with when they're suffering with vitreous degeneration, but leading up to that, vitreous floaters, of course, being a symptom leading up to these degenerations. All these. If you think about it, the vitreous itself, it provides the optical system that you and everyone likes to do business within. It provides the system for optics. It's quite remarkable, right? Yeah. And all the retinal issues that are eventually present are the consequence of the vitreous kind of just not being optimal or starting to liquefy and so on. So that's interesting. The big news, I suppose, was that the discovery and the acknowledgement that the vitreous is not a closed system. It's an open system. Contrary to maybe what people were taught in optometry programs in optometry school, the vitreous has a passive and active transfer of many, many active micronutrients, enzymes, and so on. It's one of the first pieces of work. There was a scientist who just finished his PhD on this at our facility. He did a major literature review, and I was blown away by the multiplicity of data that was out there in terms of that, various studies of specific nutrients of the vitreous. And Emmanuel's first exercise was to put all that together to see how much of it was there. And it's quite mind-blowing, the amount of antioxidants. And then what you try and do is see what's concentrated and localized. So what's kind of really there, what's really potentially meaningful. And one of them was vitamin C. And it was news to me when I learned that, when I'm studying vitamin C, because I'd never studied vitamin C, really. It's a water-soluble vitamin. I've focused on my carotenoid friends. But to see that vitamin C actually, the question I'd ask you is why is the vitreous not yellow? When you think of vitamin C, classically we see it as yellow-orange, right?
Right.
Yeah, so it's not because it's not, vitamin C in the vitreous is not oxidized. Vitamin C is only yellow when it's oxidized, which I found quite amazing. Yeah. So that's interesting. But anyway, to the point, we see that in my view, there's two types of people that exist. There's people that have floaters and genuinely can live with them. They're not overly bothersome. They just get on with it. They've got used to it. But there's a large percentage of that population who really are suffering. And so we ran an experiment whereby, and it was in a collaboration with a German colleague, Robert Kuckling. He has an organization called the Biga Vision. And he worked with a couple of German ophthalmologists and a Polish ophthalmologist. And he approached me about the vitreous and said, look, we'd love your center to consider doing research with nutrition of the vitreous. We believe there's something there. And I was very reluctant, non-responsive, if I'm to be honest, wrongly so. But we eventually got on the journey. And we built it from a very solid scientific foundation, using all our skills from what we had learned up to that point. And we worked with optometry, local optometry, some very good optometrists around the Waterford region who were delighted to hear that something was being done in the area of vitreous. And we eventually recruited our patients actually through a vitreoretinal surgeon here at the Institute of Eye Surgery, Dr. Eugene Ning, one of the world's best vitreoretinal surgeons. And he basically said, look, I've a whole bunch of patients, John, who are really, really suffering. I agree with you. It is a disease. They're not suitable for vitrectomies or laser, or have opted not to have that. So let's maybe start there. So we ran what we coined the FLIES trial, and 6 months of intervention. And the primary outcome measure and it was placebo controlled. The primary outcome measure in that was vision related quality of life. And essentially 2 questions, are the floaters bothering you kind of your daily life? And just scaling that, validated questionnaire all the way back to how have they affected you over the previous 6 months. So these were the 2 subjective questions. And remarkably, we were able to work with our Heidelberg system using wide angle, 105 degrees wide angle, where we were able to capture and quantify using a novel approach, the actual size of the floaters in these patients. And that was really cool to be able to do that. It's very research based at the moment, but we were able to validate that, and very high repeatability. So if I was to repeat it on 3 occasions, my interclass correlation was like 0.95, 0.96. So basically getting the same score. Yeah. So we were pretty much ready to go, and we ran a placebo control. There was a subtle placebo effect, which you would expect in a study of this in terms of the subjective outcomes, but there was a highly significant improvement in quality of life. I think 70% thereabouts of the patients on the active ingredients, the Vitreous health ingredient, reported a significant improvement in their vision-related quality of life. and reduce suffering of their floaters. Now, so there was still 30% reported no benefit from this. So we must scale the excitement around that. But imagine if we have something that is 70% effective to this point, and that's only with 6 months of intervention. But the big win was when that was able to be correlated with the objective measures. So we could physically see, a shrinking of the opacities. And then the question is, well, how and why, which is always the question us scientists have to try and address. And the honest answer is we don't have all the answers, but basic logic again speaks to the antioxidant effect. So cleaning up the vitreous, keeping it healthy. Essentially, the collagen fibers and our crosslinks are being compromised. They're being oxidized. And it's like, I explained it to my daughter Penny, like, think of a ladder, because she was asking me to explain it. And I was like, imagine if the steps of the ladder just broke in the middle, what would happen to the ladder? And it collapses. So this is what happens with the collagen fibers. And then they join together, they form these conglomerates. And then obviously glycation being the other known mechanism around the formation of vitreous floaters. So the anti-glycative properties of these nutrients. And also then finally piece that we discussed in the paper is the enzymatic benefits of L-lysine, for example. So it's a combination of naturally occurring nutrients like L-lysine, vitamin C. There's very low amounts of high effective zinc and so on that are locally present and have the ability to deliver a synergistic benefit across those mechanisms.
So the only thing I'm confused about, so help our listeners to understand, is this different, John, than MacuHealth?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, absolutely. These are water soluble vitamins. Okay. So basically, for your listeners, when we looked at the macula, we looked at the nutrients that were concentrated in the macula. It seems very obvious, but sometimes people forget that question. What's actually localized? So we do the same. So the vitreous is mostly water, 98% water. So you're looking at a water soluble environment. So basically it was concentrating and identifying the nutrients that are present in the vitreous.
So two different products, but a patient could take both?
Great question, of course. Yeah, because they're not going to compete with each other. Like one of the issues with carotenoid supplementation could be that if you were taking like many other carotenoids, like beta carotene or lycopene, that I call it the taxi system, the blood system, and it can only carry so many of these nutrients. And if you over concentrate one, you can become defective in the others. And that's why MacuHealth has been so effective, because we've worked with various ratios. We've looked at what point does a carotenoid become kind of suppressed and deflated we saw this in arids. We saw with beta carotene there was suppression and decline in lutein. With these nutrients of Vitreous Health, this is another product. It's another product, and there's not going to be any interaction. I actually take both because when I presented the paper for the first time in the US on the Vitreous, I told a personal story, which was I had been suffering a little bit myself with floaters, and over the pandemic I started playing tennis because I used to race half marathons and stuff, which I still do a lot of running, but I wanted to do something else. So my wife, Jane, signed the girls and I up to the tennis club, which is just down the road from where we live. So I'm a very competitive guy. So I started to play tennis, and I found that the effects of the floaters were pretty traumatic for me. And unfortunately, I had a very difficult scare this year. I was in Hawaii at a conference, the Island Eyes conference, and I nearly drowned, April. I got caught in a riptide in Hawaii. Yeah, I was probably a minute away from not doing this podcast, to be honest. So I had a very traumatic experience. Yeah, some local guy, thank God, saved me at 7:30 in the morning. I stupidly went swimming on my own, and he saw I got into trouble. But anyway, I was I was okay after it, but I had a really kind of bad episode. Now I've been checked, everything has been checked. So I went on the product myself in January, the Vitreous Health, and I still have some floaters, but it got to the point where I actually didn't want to play tennis at one stage, and now thankfully it feels all my case, not real science, case study n equals 1, but I like telling the story because I would really miss taking that product.
So what happens then, John? Will you stay on the product when you stop using the product? What will happen? Is this something patients are going to ask? Do I need to be on this for my lifetime?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I think for the patients that are really suffering when they get on it, I think it's my experience is that you're kind of reluctant to come off it.
Oh, sure.
What happens when they come off it, I don't know. I can only be honest with you. I don't know. So it may be that if people find it effective and it works and they want to take a break from it and see what happens, maybe we'll have to do a longer intervention. And, we're actually at the moment talking with Dr. Sibak about, because he published with us, by the way, on the major review we did. And he's what he said to me as a vitreoretinal surgeon, he sees the pain in patients. Yeah. He sees the suffering. And, he's really interested in what we've achieved so far. Just like any good scientist wants it to be replicated, wants to do more. He's very interested. Actually, we're going to design an experiment where we actually quantify these nutrients in the vitreous following intervention. That's one of the data points we're looking at, because there is more we need to do on this. But right now, it's a very safe, effective solution and the patients will tell you, if I'm wrong, you can tell me on the next podcast. But we've seen already from when I presented this a couple of months ago in the US, I've had so much communication back from patients who are so grateful, and doctors alike. Yeah.
Wow, that's great. Well, I don't know, John, if you are having some of the same issues that we are here in the US, but I want to change the subject just for a second and tell you a little bit about that. We really are struggling with having success in training new employees because we have such issues with staff turnover. Life is different now. Post-pandemic, we are seeing all kinds of changes in staffing. And so I know, and I wanted to make sure we bring this up before we get off this podcast and move on to another one. Next time we'll talk more. But if you could just briefly talk about something I think is equally interesting and incredible that you have put together, which is called Macularism. How can that help us with bringing our teams to a level of understanding of what you're doing and of products that will help us in practice?
Yeah, thank you for that opportunity. So again, Macularism is basically an educational online service that is delivered from the university here. And, some of the great speakers, Dr. Stringham, myself, Mark Rourke, and others have contributed to the content of this. The idea was, I suppose, just like everyone over the pandemic, how can we help? How can we make information available? And it worked to a degree in that regard where doctors were able to get their it's COPE approved, so they're able to get their continual education points, no problem. But actually, one of the places I've seen this work best is that there's an ophthalmic technician, or assist.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how you
That's perfect.
Is that okay? Yeah. So I didn't want to misrepresent that brilliant population, or those brilliant workers, because they're so valuable to what you do. But then that's exactly the point. They're so valuable to what happens in eye care.
Yep.
And you're such a busy doctor. You need all the supports possible. So what if there's a program whereby your main assistant or your group of assistants are in tune to a level of education that helps you and helps the message, more importantly, leave your clinic office with the patient. So what we've been able to do, and we now have hundreds of people who have successfully done this, they're able to do a Macularism ophthalmic techs course. It takes about an hour to complete. And at the end of that, once they pass, I think it's 80% plus, they will be certified for macular nutrition certified. Wow. And it gives, what we've seen is that it brings your assistants and your technicians into the community of care. And it also means that when they are now representing you, speaking to the patients who may have got 50, 60% of the message from you in that busy journey go on, right? And then you're next, that there's this other layer of comfort, education, and other layer of quality. And it's about being able to answer all the questions around why 3 carotenoids, is it good for vision? Is it just for protection? Who should take it? Is it safe? How long will it take? And so your team, your colleagues having that information as well can only be beneficial and useful. So we're very excited about the Macularism program and collaboration with Pacific Optometry as well, and Salus Optometry in the US. They've been very supportive to kind of help promote and coexist with this. So that's something else we've been doing.
So how do people access it?
So it's available on the website, macularism.com. You can sign in, but if people wanted to kind of write to the info section there as well, we can maybe help them. And I know organizations that have approached us, several organizations, but Macu Health being one, always try and support doctors to find a way for their team to gain access to this information. But it's an independent website. It's available to any group, any chain of optometrists. It's the CE for both the optometrists if they like, but also probably most importantly for the ophthalmic technicians. That's awesome.
Well, as we wrap up, one thing I know is coming up soon, and some listeners may listen to this even after the conference is over, but can you tell everybody a little bit about what is coming up soon in 2022?
2022. So apart from our research, which continues, we have our Bond conference, Brain and Ocular Nutrition Conference. And it was supposed to happen last year, but for obvious reasons, we carefully agreed to delay it till July, the last weekend in July. And as I said I was with the committee the other day, this is like Christmas for scientists, in terms of what we're going to get. And we will have a 3-day event. It's a scientific event. It's held down in College, Cambridge. So very powerful scientific place to be. The top, in my view, the world's best scientists in vision science and macular nutrition contribute to this. We will have 25 lectures over the 3 days from the world's top professors. And we also, and probably most importantly, have 25, 30 presentations from new investigators. So new ideas. We call this the early investigator group. And it's just a carnival of science. And it's a very strategic meeting insofar as it's very focused to identify the future in terms of where we should go. But most importantly for me, April, it's a platform for the cleverest people in this area to be empowered and comforted to go on their own scientific journey. And it's just probably our biggest achievement, actually, the Bond conference, because we've agreement to publish all the proceedings in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease, which is great.
Wow.
But the networking piece here will be remarkable. I've seen firsthand already, top professors identify, a PhD or a student or a postdoc that may do very well and benefit from collaboration. And we, our own Dr. Rebecca Power, who finished her PhD with us, is now working in the University of Illinois with Dr. Aaron Barbie on a Marie Curie, so a remarkable achievement for Rebecca. And that's just one example of many of these. So it's very scientific, but it's the foundations of what we do. And then everything we do thereafter, it's not always in agreement, that's the whole power of science. We can disagree as scientists, but ultimately there's a consistency of thought that we want to have quality science. And that's where it begins. When I talk to you on a program like this and say, look, these are good for vision, it's built from a long way back as to why that is. And it's not just John Nolan or the NRCI. There's a world of expertise that play into this. Some of the best minds. America has certainly been major. America is very important to me. It's, I'm a Fulbright scholar myself, and I've had the joy of spending secondment time at UCSD and again, as I did at the beginning of this podcast, I'd like to congratulate US Optometry for being brave and for doing this and for using the science and for safely implementing it. And I believe thousands of patients have benefited.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited I get to join you at Vaughan 2022. So I will hopefully be able to bring some really cool information to our listeners. But Professor, I just want to thank you so much. For all of you listeners, you can find out more information. We're going to give you information that you can click on if you're on the YouTube channel to learn more about what Professor John Nolan is doing currently and to see their website, to learn about Macularism. But I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're so busy, and we appreciate you being here with us.
It's my pleasure. And congratulations on your wonderful podcast, April. I wish you every success.
Thank you.
Your eyes and your vision are under attack. Damaging blue light from the sun, your phone, your computer, your tablet, even light bulbs and car headlights is constantly bombarding you. The good news is our eyes actually already have a line of defense to counter the effects of blue light. This defense is made up of 3 pigments called carotenoids. MacuHealth with Micromicelle, the only supplement with the exclusive patent on all 3 macular carotenoids and Micromicelle technology.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Opt In with Dr. April Jasper.